Hello, and welcome to In Bed with Books, the podcast where we talk about smutty fantasy with each other and with you. My name is Melissa.
And I'm Bethany.
And where else can you find us, Bethany?
You can find us in a few places. On our website, inbedwithbookspod.com, and also on Instagram at inbedwithbookspod. We also have a Discord, which you can follow in the link in our bio.
And then if you go to the description box below, check out those links and you can find us anywhere else.
And what are we talking about today, Melissa?
Let's find out.
All right. All right.
Okay.
We're in business.
So, you wanna take it off? Okay.
Sure.
Whoa!
So today is a special day because we have the Bibliophile blonde
Yeah.
Bibliophile. Yes.
No, Bibliophile blonde. Yeah.
Cool.
Blonde on the
Yes.
end.
Yes. We have the Bibliophile blonde Molly Tullis on with us today, who we have been following for a long time and just love your reels, love your bookstagram, love your attitude around romance, which is something we love.
We're pro Nesta.
Pro Nesta.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Very pro
Yes.
Nesta. I would say there's my Nesta tattoo.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that was one of the first things that I was like, that's my people. Okay.
Yeah.
I think my reel today was literally the one I posted today was literally about Nesta. Because I'm always thinking about Nesta.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
She does. Okay. We need to get a book on Azrael because the tall, skinnier, stoic type, that's my type. But
Okay.
from the books we've had so far, Cassian is kind of better than Reese. I'm just going to say it.
All day. All day.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
I will be excited for an Azrael book because duh. But here's the thing. I'm excited about it, but I'm going to disagree with you because Cassian is my type. From day one. Day one, when he shows up and as soon as he shows up, I was like, oh, that motherfucker. And you want to know why? I know this because when I loved Twilight, which I did, I was a fucking Emmett girly. I was an Emmett girly.
Yes.
So then this comes out and I'm like, oh, same thing.
Yep.
Dude, same. I think it's pretty clear on this podcast that Melissa and I both have our own types.
Yeah.
But
Mine is a bit of a jumble because I am a Reese girl, unfortunately.
It's okay.
Not unfortunately. Fortunately.
That's good.
He was my
good
first
for you.
love.
I get it.
But
I get it.
but
Okay.
yeah. But I am I want them big. I want them to pick me up. I want to feel small.
Big, himbo
Yes.
boys.
Yes.
And I joke all the time with my girlfriend. I say because I'm single and all of my girlfriends are in partnerships. So I'm the only one who's out on the scene. I say that I fucking ever do it. Dating is so shit. I never do.
Yeah.
I say that I'm ever out on the town, which I'm not. But anyway, I'll be describing my type, and they'll be like, "Oh, you like big dudes." I'm like, "No, I don't think you understand." I say that, and you think of a gym rat. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a man who's shaped like a fridge.
Yeah.
You talk about a Viking. You want a Viking. Yeah.
Viking, large pagan men. I don't like abs. I think you look skinny. I don't like it. Don't look inviting. I don't want to snuggle up next to you.
Same.
Yeah.
Fridge boys.
I want some pillow. I need I need to stick my face
Yes.
somewhere.
Yes. Fridge boys. That's what I say all the time. I'm like,
I love that.
I want someone who's shaped like a fridge. I'm not fucking big arms. Yeah. I like arm muscles and back muscles, but I do not go for abs or the dudes where I'm just all right, you spend a lot of time. I'm not into that. I'm give me what, and this sounds mean and I don't mean it to, but real fitness. I'm oh, you got buff out in the woods.
Yes.
You're not.
Yes. Yes.
And then doing this, doing the right protein powder, which is respect.
Yeah, it's you're surviving.
Yes. I'm one of you.
And I will make it with you. Like, I will survive with you.
I'm purely.
I will fuck you if you keep me safe.
Yes. Yes. Like, brain where I'm like, you can hunt and I will gather. I won't gather shit, but I'm like, you can clearly like throw down. That is, you will survive in the wilderness. I will never be in the wilderness. You won't need to protect me in the wilderness. Like my cave lady brain kicks in. So himbos, large himbos. I was an Emmett girly, which nobody else was. Everybody was either like, you were either I said Taylor Lautner, and that's not it. You were either like, you know, Jacob or fucking Edward. Thank you. I was just gonna say Emmett again. And I was always an Emmett girly, and now from day one, I was like, oh, I'm fucking waiting for Cassian. Like that's what I want. So when that book came out, I was feral.
We were talking about, so we did Twilight last season.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because Bethany hadn't seen it. She hadn't seen the movies. I know. I was balls deep in the Twilight craze. And so like I got to relive it.
I was deep. But I feel like you had to hit it
at the right time.
It was a really precise fit. Yeah. I remember I was in 7th grade. No, 8th grade? One of the two. I'm splitting hairs at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, so I was like 13. So I was like ready for something like this. And I remember I was hanging out in my library after school because that's the kind of cool fucking kid that I was. And I was in my library like after school hours, and I was chatting it up with a librarian. I was with one of my friends. We were in theater together, so I think we were hanging out for like theater practice, like theater rehearsal or something. Yes, I was cool as a child.
I was in theater too, so you know.
Yeah, maybe.
Clearly, so like, panty droppers over here, just
obviously
killing it. Yep.
I was fucking just slaying the game. So like before theater practice, we were in the library, and I remember she handed me Twilight, and she was like, "Oh, this is like so popular right now. Like everybody's loving this." And I was like, "Oh, well, if everybody's reading it, I should read it." And then just fucking all downhill from there. But I literally remember the day that the librarian handed me Twilight. And it just was like, and I got so sucked into it because, it just was like the right time in the right place. And my parents loved it because Edward wanted to wait until marriage. So my parents thought it was fucking great.
Yeah.
It was one of the few like vampire pop culture things I could enjoy. Because so much of that we weren't allowed to.
Yeah. Were you allowed to do Harry Potter?
So I was on one condition. And my mom had to read the book first.
Okay.
So my mom was like, well, you know, I'm going to, you know, I don't know, there's witches and, you know, and she's like, well, let me read the book first. So she read the first book, and she told my dad it was fine. Cause she was like, you know what? It's good versus evil. So like, that's okay. Cause it's still the idea of like, and because we were like in a cult of Christianity that was, you know, it's more similar to witchcraft than they think. They would die if they realized that, but it's true. So I like the more like magical side of it, I think she was like more keen to without knowing it. So we were allowed to do Harry Potter, but she did read the first book first before allowing us to read it. And then we got the all clear. So we were all in on Harry Potter, but
that's good.
For some reason, Pokemon we were not allowed to do.
Apparently I've heard that a lot.
Yeah, I don't know where it came from, but like we were not allowed to do anything Pokemon, and I don't know where that came from.
I feel like, and this is like fully theory, I have no like actual basis for this. I feel like part of it is because it's like anime. It's like
there's probably like Asian, some xenophobic, like
like a little bit of that with and I think there's something scarier for like parents about something where like kids want to go out and play it. Like it was like a craze. It was like
was a craze for sure.
Like a little children's cult.
I think there was also just a general amongst the super religious, especially like Christians in the 2000s. I think there was also a general attitude of like, at least the phrase that was tossed around in our house all the time was being like of the world. So I think like anything that was like inherently popular outside of the church was like probably demonic. So I think there was also just a good chunk of like, oh, well, it's this really popular thing, but you know, you should be not, you know, so I think there's also just probably a general like just fear about it. I'm sure it was somewhat rooted in like,
if anyone's having fun,
you know,
You gotta.
Right. How dare you?
Like
if anybody's having fun,
get it out.
We gotta crack down.
Get the devil out. Like,
get the devil out of here. They're having too much fun.
It's like, oh
It's
no,
like
they want to fuck.
It's like,
get them out of here.
Yeah. They can't dance.
They can't dance.
Yeah.
No dancing.
Sorry, you made me spit. I was unfortunately a Jasper girl right up until we got confirmed that he was like a Confederate soldier. And then I was like, never mind. And then I was like, Team Edward.
Also was like the weirdest fucking thing to add into that series.
Yes. That's exactly
what
we
we talk about. Like, why the fuck would you do that? Like,
yes.
I guess
like there's no like purpose to it. Like it wasn't like he had like some kind of like, it doesn't serve anything. It's just like this stupid weird detail.
I know it was like, oh, well, he's got a history training newborn vampires. You could have made any other story, any other backstory.
Yes.
Like, yeah. You could have done the same thing, but just made him a Union soldier. Like, we could have literally done anything other than, like, why did you have to make him the kid? Although I will say, though, Jasper girlies, of course, become Azrael girlies because, like,
and that was something else we said is
social, so there you go.
Twilight, like the pairings in Twilight are basically the pairings in ACOTAR.
Yeah, it is because they're all based on tropes.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's a tried and true. It hits every time, baby.
And instead of being a Confederate soldier, Azrael's just like into BDSM.
Yeah, which like better,
way better, way better,
so much better.
So that I think that's a good intro.
Yeah, that's a great intro.
Yes.
What else do you need?
Okay, so generally, go ahead, Bethany. Sorry,
I was gonna say maybe. I mean, that might have been a good intro, but maybe like Molly, you want to kind of give yourself like a little intro of like what you're up to, where people can find you and shit like that.
Yeah. Yeah. What am I up to? Great question.
Yeah.
I have to check. I have like 4 planners. I have ADHD, so I write it down in multiple places to try and remember. So every day I have to ask myself, what am I getting up to?
Yeah.
Yes, but I'm at the Bibliophile blonde. You can find me everywhere on that. So Patreon, Instagram, and TikTok are all just Bibliophile blonde. I write under my name, which is Molly Tullis. All of my books are available on Amazon. I am also slowly getting everything rolled out to like Barnes & Noble and other independent retailers, but the whole process takes a while. But you can just type my name into Amazon and find everything. I'm currently in the middle of my Greek mythology series, which is called the Asphodel series, based on one of the levels of the underworld. So it all focuses on underworld, Greek gods and goddesses. They're on KU, they're spicy. Which I feel like are the number one things people ask me. They can be read as standalones. That's the other question that I get all the time. I do recommend reading them in order because, I mean, I read them in order, so like there's spoilers, I guess. But they do focus each one on a couple, so you could read them as standalones. And currently, I'm working on a novella for that series, which I'm super excited. It is Hermes and Hercules. Our babies. So I'm super excited. I'm working on that right now, which I hope to have out like January of next year. If the words cooperate. But I'm super pumped. He's a really fun character. He's a side character in all of the other books. And the number one comment I feel that I get is, we want a Hermes book. Like, you know, people really like him. And I was like, I'm not gonna do a full book. But I'll do the novella. And I just got the idea of pairing him with Hercules and I couldn't get over it. So that's what I'm working on now.
I feel like Hermes is like the trickster character. And so everyone always wants the sex from the trickster character.
Yeah.
Obviously. Yeah. Oh, it's going to be, yeah. He throws down.
Good.
There's some fun comments. It's been alluded to kind of throughout the series. You don't need to know this, obviously, to read them because they are all written as standalones. But like, it's been alluded that like him and Hecate hooked up once upon a time. And like, you know, because they've been around for thousands of years. And in my mind, all gods' sexuality is super fluid because they're gods. So like, why the fuck would anybody ever choose, you know? So I was thinking about it and I just was like, and so many of Hercules' 12 labors involved trickery. So it kind of came together really, really, really easily. The plot did, because I was like, well, you know, trickster's gonna trickster. So I'm super excited. Nice. It's gonna be really fun. But that's what I'm working on now. So hopefully that'll be out in the next couple weeks. We'll see.
Awesome. Nice. Okay.
A couple months. Fun stuff.
So I guess just quick overview of what we're doing today. We're just chit-chatting about books read, books written.
Love it.
Publishing random shit related to books. So I think you're the first like writer, like YA fiction writer, or not YA, but like fantasy fiction writer that we've had on.
Yeah.
And so we want to delve into that a little bit as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Bethany,
cool.
I'd like to.
Cool. Yeah. So I'll start. Okay. We talked a little bit about Twilight, but like, what was like the first book that like got you into reading? Like,
first book got me into reading. Yes. So I'm also going to apologize in advance because I feel like this is my ADHD. I'm not kidding. You asked that question and my brain went, okay, well, when I was 4 and I was like, Molly, I think your answers can probably be a little shorter. You don't need to start when you were 4. I was a very avid reader from a super young age. And I distinctly remember one of my babysitters reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe to us. And I remember thinking like, oh, this slaps. So that was one of the first series that really got me into it. I didn't pick it up again and read the rest of the series until I was in 4th grade. When I was in 4th grade, I had an incredible teacher. Obviously, his impact on my life is massive. Who is a big fantasy reader, like old school, like loved good fantasy stuff and really pushed reading and writing on all of us as students. And he introduced me to Lord of the Rings. And then I read the rest of the Narnia series. Because again, like growing up a Christian in the 2000s, like everybody knew Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. But I read the rest of the series, and then I read Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit for the first time when I was 10, and that set me off immediately on, we are off to the races. Like this is it. I was also really obsessed with the Magic Treehouse books. Did you read those?
I remember those. I didn't read those.
Oh my God. I loved them because they were all like myth and magic. They like these two brothers, like this brother and sister went up to this tree house that would take them, would time travel them. And then they like solve a mystery, and like every book they'd go to another like time period.
Yeah.
So of course that was something that I was obsessed with. And then the Princess Diaries, not the ones that were turned into the movie with Anne Hathaway, but they were literal, like they were written like diary entries from historical princesses throughout time.
Nice.
I'm not kidding. I bought the entire set on eBay last year as like a healing your inner child thing. I'd always wanted them. So I have the entire like 18 book set,
Nice.
which is amazing. But obviously was always like a huge history nerd. So I loved these. They were like fake diaries from like famous princesses from all over the world. So I always loved those, but I think the big turning point was obviously first time I found Lord of the Rings and like the whole Narnia series. It was just game over after that. I just read everything I could get my hands on.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
Same.
Yeah.
I read Lord of the Rings and it kind of changed. It turned me into a reader.
Yeah. I think everybody has that moment.
Granted, it was after the movies came out, and then I started reading, and I was like, "Oh, cool, yeah."
That's okay. The thing, like, how many people read the movies though, and then were like, "Oh, I'm good. I don't need to read books."
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, you read the books after. Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares? We're not gatekeeping when and how people found things that they love. We don't care. That's great.
Lord of the Rings is too good to gatekeep.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Seriously, unless we're talking about keeping it from Amazon.
Okay. Unpopular opinion. I do like the show.
Okay, here's the thing. I'm a bad person. I watched the first 2 episodes because they dropped like 2 in one night.
Yeah.
And then I didn't hate it, but I got so nervous. I haven't finished the rest of the season.
That's fair.
And people have told me, like avid diehard Tolkien heads have told me like, no, it's good. There's good emotional payoff. Like you should finish it. And I intend to finish it. Also I would like, just to make a footnote, fuck anybody who's being a racist twat about that. Like black elves and dwarves forever. Like fuck you. Like
it was literally, I was watching out of spite at first because generally like quick soapbox moment, like
I love it.
The way that TV is structured now, like plot on like full 8 to 10 episode shows is structured now is so drawn out because it has to be that like they want you to stream it. But now, or like they want you to binge it. But now even shows that aren't bingeable, like
they try to make you binge them.
Yeah. It's like, well, how am I supposed to, like, this episode isn't like a full plot. And this isn't just for this show. It's for a lot of shows I'm noticing recently.
Yeah.
And it's like, but you're not releasing another episode for another week. So how the fuck am I supposed to binge it? So that's my issue, first of all, with that.
Yeah.
But like, I was like on board because I was like, if it pisses off the racists, then I'm going to do it.
Yeah. I always tell people like, I've got a mixed feeling about like the show, but like, then I always feel like, but I want a footnote. Fuck you if you're racist.
Yes.
Like, that's not my issue with the show.
Yes.
Like in the first 2 episodes, the dwarf wife was like the best character.
Yes.
Like, fuck you. This is so ridiculous. So yeah. So I'm going to finish it. And I've heard that it's the payoff near the end of the season is quite great. So I've heard it's good. I was very afraid after like, not that it was bad. I just was like, oh, I have so many feelings. I'm afraid. I'm like scared. I'm so hyped on dopamine just because nostalgia, like hearing games that I know and love. And I'm like, I know that that's just like nostalgia. And then I was like, I'm actually like, I don't know how to regulate these emotions. I'm scared. I'm going to just not.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I'm looking forward to finishing it. I have like a bunch of time off this month for the holidays. So I've kind of saved a bunch of things that I need to finish. And that is one of them. And I have heard that it does end quite well.
And I think I had to remind myself that like, I'm automatically going to have such high expectations because of that, like Lord of the Rings nostalgia, because he created such a beautiful universe. It's so well structured. I love structures and I love like pattern. Like I love that kind of shit, like lineages and all that shit. And he does it perfectly.
Beautifully.
And so there's absolutely no way that this could have ever compared or like been on the same level as Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And then like the things that had to come together for the movies to be so good in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Like I had to remind myself that there's just no way for me to get that high again, but it doesn't mean I can't take the hit.
Yes. I will say I was a little, because if you want a controversial Lord of the Rings opinion, I will give you one.
Okay.
It was not perfect, but I think we hate collectively as a society, we hate on the Martin Freeman Hobbit trilogy way too much.
Yes. Okay. I agree with you.
I liked it. Now, I don't fully understand or love like the addition. I understand why they did it. I understand why they put Legolas in the story because they're like, we have to hook it to people who just saw the movies. So like, I understand like marketing wise almost where they were like, oh, we got, and also Orlando Bloom, first celebrity crush, like Pirates of the Caribbean. Hello. Also in middle school. So like, I'm always excited to see more Orlando Bloom. But I was a little like, oh, okay, a bit odd, but like whatever. But I liked them. I'm not afraid to say it. People despise them.
People like to be haters is what it is. And I'm not in the business of like denying myself the pleasure of enjoying a movie.
It was wonderful. I'm sorry. Martin Freeman was fantastic as Bilbo. He was so lovable and like, just, I loved him. I thought, what's his name? I call him Gaston, which is not correct because he was in the Beauty and the Beast.
Luke Evans.
Thank you.
Yes.
I thought Luke Evans was great. And Lee Pace as Thranduil.
That was the first time I felt like real sexual attraction towards him. I do like the daddy stuff though. So like, which I've talked about, like, that's not like, I'm not outing myself. He was a stern daddy.
Oh,
yes.
That hit all like, okay. So I have a very, like, look, I'm blonde. I bring that to the table. I don't typically like blonde MCs. I like the Khal Drogo's, like, dark hair, but I have an exception list. And it is men in a white lace front. And it is Matt Smith in House of the Dragon. It is Lee Pace as Thranduil.
Yes.
Sometimes my daddy came as long as the day is wide. I don't think that's a saying, but whatever. Look, sometimes Lucius Malfoy could probably get it. He's pinky.
I don't know if it's so much. I think it's very specifically stern daddy.
Yes. Yeah.
Blondes and like lace front weight blondes. Yes.
Yeah. Rowan Whitehorn, like in Throne of Glass.
Wesley.
Like Rowan.
Wesley from Princess Bride. That was my first.
Oh yeah.
That was my
Bride.
first. And you can tell he knows how to direct. Like,
oh yeah. That man is is not taking direction from anybody.
Mhm.
I'm horrible to watch that movie with because I will say every line of dialogue and I can't stop. Like
It's just so quotable.
It's just so quotable.
Yes.
And I turn into the most annoying motherfucker because anyone who hasn't seen it or like watches it in adulthood, I feel like it's kind of like, what the fuck? And I'm like, no, but you don't understand. Like it celebrates while mocking so many fantasy and romantic tropes at the same time. Like to celebrate them while playfully mocking them is like so good because it's one of those like, it's self-critical and like the joke is coming from inside the house, but
it's like aware. It's aware.
So
self-aware, but then also like celebrates and it's like, and we all love a fucking good love story where they literally ride off into the sunset. So like it is so mocking and self-aware, but also is still fully like, and we fucking love this shit.
Yeah.
Like it's the perfect film. It is a masterclass in storytelling and dialogue. Like it's
and Robin Wright.
Yes.
Oh, and Robin Wright in the red
girl
dress.
crush hard.
Yeah, in that red dress going down the hill with Wesley in all black.
And she's just so like tries to be so strong and like what are you doing? And like stuck up, but then she just like can't help it. She just loves him.
Because she's a Nesta.
Yes. And then I also love that it's like a grandfather telling this story to his like grandson, because like romance is, it's like, it's very actively like,
is this a kissing book?
Is this like it's
and then he
taking that stereotype and it's just like
totally
shooting it straight in the face. Yes.
And, I mean, I'm from Chicago, so we always even felt, because like that takes place like in Chicago, the boy's wearing like a Bears jersey, you know? So for whatever reason, that always made me feel so seen as a child, because like Chicago didn't get enough representation. I don't know, but I was always like, oh my God, like Chicago.
Yep.
Well, we're from the suburbs. Sorry, we're from like an hour away, so I shouldn't say that I'm like from Chicago. I live in Chicago now.
That's probably where he was.
Yeah,
I don't know anyone in Chicago that likes the Bears that much.
Yeah, nobody does.
Yeah.
Good reason. He's actually in Minnesota and he loves the Bears. Doesn't like the Vikings. Yeah. Oh God, so good. But so anyway, so my complaint about the Lord of the Rings TV show was I love like my lead pace hot elf daddies. And I was watching the Lord of the Rings show and I was like, but none of you are hot.
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, the king looks like an accountant.
The king. Okay. So Gilgalad, he actually like, I don't know where he's from, but I can't get out of my head the fact that he was like in a rom-com as like the Southern guy. And so every time he opens his mouth, I expect like a Southern accent to come out.
But that's what I'm saying. I was like, elf kings are supposed to be hot. Like also his face feels too much like a man. Yeah. He's got he's a man. There's nothing like elven about his face. Yeah. No, there's nothing like, because elves I just feel like are also just like inherently so hot they're almost androgynous. Like all elves. Like because you think of Bowie in why am I blanking?
Labyrinth.
Thank you. Thank you. Like they're so hot. There's just that element of like you are so attractive. You clearly suspend gender norms, like binary gender norms, and that's what Lee Pace was doing for sure. God, I've never really gotten into the like your dad, like boyfriend's dad trope, but like with Orlando Bloom as Legolas and then Lee Pace as Thranduil, like I could get into it. Yeah. Oh God, that sounds like
an exception.
Somebody's done that on.
Somebody's
history, right?
If you've thought it, it's done.
If you thought it, there's fanfic for it.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna have to run that. I'm gonna run that search later.
Yes. I will say though, Hallbrand has my heart.
Wait,
if you watch, I don't know if you would have met him just yet.
I don't know if I met him yet.
Okay, so Galadriel like is about to enter the lands of the Undying, and she jumps off the ship. That's at the end of episode 2, right?
Yep, end of 2. That's right where it ended. She like jumped off because she was like, "No, I'm good. I don't want to go home to lands of the Undying."
So she's about to find this like raft with survivors from a shipwreck.
Oh, that's right.
He's on that. Yeah, he has my heart.
Oh, all right. Well, now I'm even more invested to keep going.
Yes, now there's definitely like a little bit of like not quite enemies to lovers, but like definitely enemies to lovers. Yeah,
tension.
Yes, some definite tension, and then they battle together later. Not quite a spoiler. They battle together later, and then they're like sitting on a bench together, and they're like that felt great. And I was like, like touch each other right now. So
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
So the payoff is just chef's kiss.
All right.
It's beautiful.
I literally have like I think almost 3 weeks off between like leftover holiday PTO and big posts and shit. So I'm going to I have to finish that. I started the new Anne Rice AMC's Interview with a Vampire.
Nice.
With Greyjoy in it.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking amazing. I've only watched 2 episodes. And then I just got sidetracked and I was like, I will wait to binge it. Go figure.
Mm-hmm.
But fucking amazing. And Anne Rice fought for years to get her rights back to that series.
Hell yeah.
After the movie with Brad Pitt
mm-hmm.
And Tom Cruise, which I do believe she's quoted as like liking it. I don't think she despised it, but she fought for years to get her rights back because she wanted a different or like a better adaptation. And I do feel like Interview is something that is much more absolutely should be a TV show because you need like 9 hours.
Yeah.
And the acting, like it's fucking unreal. Like this guy they have playing Louis and Greyjoy, who has a name that is just Greyjoy.
He's Greyjoy.
Yeah, he's Greyjoy. Like or Grey Worm, whatever.
Yes.
too many grays.
Yeah.
I love Game of Thrones, but like, oh my god. It's so good. It's fucking delicious. So that's another one of that binge. But I will get there. It will happen eventually.
Nice. Yeah, I've heard good things about that one. And I never really saw the original movie. But because like
I've seen it.
When I discovered it when I was like older, so I'm an only child. So for a long time, everything I engaged with, movie, TV, music, everything came from my parents.
Sure.
And they aren't really into that kind of stuff. They aren't against it entirely. My dad wasn't really keen on Harry Potter, but like they didn't really engage with it. And so I discovered it more like later on when I was like a stupid teenager and I was like, Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise are so overrated. And then I was like, oh, maybe I should, like a few years later, I was like, oh, maybe I should, like, maybe I was just overreacting. And now I'm like, I don't care. I don't care enough about either of them to want to watch it.
Sit around and watch it.
But
just watch the AMC series at this point.
Yes, I've heard it's so good. So that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, just watch the series at this point. It's also like a 3-hour movie.
I know. Milo and I started watching it like a couple weeks ago, and I actually really liked it. Tom Cruise did really good. Brad Pitt's just kind of like whatever.
Brad Pitt is just kind of there.
He's just kind of there.
Awkward.
Yeah. But then I watched Twilight. We did a watch party and we watched Twilight for the first time. And I was watching it and I was watching Carlisle and I was like, he's literally copying Tom Cruise.
He's doing Tom Cruise.
He sounds exactly like him. And I'm like, is that on purpose? I think it is. Like,
it probably was in his show notes for sure. For sure. Yeah. Like for a while that was vampire media.
Yeah.
Was like the Brad Pitt and the Tom Cruise Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah.
Like that's what you had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then Twilight kind of kicked everything off again and vampires kind of came back. But for a while it was just Anne Rice. I mean, she invented the vampire PNR genre, like she did.
Yeah.
Nobody, obviously vampires have been around since, like the original Dracula. But nobody was doing it like Anne Rice did it. And then for a while, like you just had Anne Rice and you had that movie. So I'm sure that was in his show.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Like as like the older generation.
Yeah. Like that's like the only vampire thing he watched. And then he got cast in this and was like, fuck.
in the like pre-Twilight, actually, I read this book series by Amelia Atwater Rhodes, and this is another one that I've talked about on the podcast before. They're easier books.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the books in the series was called Demon in My View.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like really gothy, like not gothic, like 90s, 80s
like
goth.
Yeah.
Yes. And I loved it. I loved it so much. I think it was really like, it was still holding on to that kind of classic idea of a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if Twilight hadn't taken off the way that it did, and we didn't kind of have that, like we've had to kind of like pull vampires back out from the darkness, like the actual like what, like the creepy sensual
seductive,
yes, that element out, like back out of it. And I kind of wish that her books had come out more in that period, because I feel like people would love these. They're so good, like the covers, or even this like 90s goth style, and I love it so much. So I think, as much as I love Twilight, I do think we had a rough couple of years there for like us vampire girls.
Oh, we did. Because like, here's the thing. I love it. And I love it nostalgically, because I was right at 13, like, you know, so I didn't have a chance, like, you know, but it's bad. Like, it's bad. Like, it's bad. And if you like vampire shit, I'm not recommending Twilight to you.
Yeah.
Like, at all. If you like the CW, like, I will recommend Twilight to you.
Yeah.
So I love it, but it is a love-hate, like, just pure love for the nostalgia and the insanity, because like the first midnight movie I ever went to was Pirates of the Caribbean, actually. Pirates of the Caribbean was like my first midnight movie. It was like the second one, like Dead Man's Chest. I went to a midnight showing. That was like my first midnight movie ever. Nice. Eventually we did all of the Twilight ones too, and the Harry Potters. Because those came out through high school, like the last movies and stuff. But my first midnight, and like, I wish that this would come back. And do you remember when like Barnes and Noble would host a midnight thing?
Yes.
When books would come out.
Yes.
And like, I remember like going to a Barnes and Noble that was open exclusively like that night at midnight to get, I think it was Breaking Dawn or something, or Eclipse. I don't remember, but like they were open at midnight and it was lit. And do you know what I would give for a brick and mortar bookstore to open at midnight for the next, like for the Asriel book? Like the fucking fun that the bookstore girlies would have with that shit. I would have a meetup in Chicago. We would all be there at midnight. We are going to be hiding flasks on our person, like waiting in line.
I'd probably die.
Yeah. I'm like, I would give anything for Barnes and Nobles to do midnight releases again.
Anything for that high once again. Like I need to relive that.
Dopamine.
Yeah.
I've never known joy like that since. I'm like, Barnes and Noble, please. Or like an indie bookstore. Actually, it probably would be more fun in an indie bookstore.
Yes.
Because you could probably literally do like a cocktails night. I'm gonna email some people in Chicago.
Let's write some letters.
Let's write some letters.
Yes, let's do it. Let's get it done ourselves.
Let's start
be the change we wish to see.
Let's start a letter writing campaign.
Yes.
I'm like,
yes, Leslie.
I know a bunch of independent bookstores in Chicago. Like, email them and be like, hey, hear me out. Midnight.
Yes.
It would probably have to be something like Sarah J. Maas, because it would have to be like massive,
worth it.
But
okay, I have a question for you that's not on the list.
All right.
And I really want to know. I saw this reel or something I watched a while ago where you were talking about how you have such a hard time writing sex scenes.
Yeah. I
want to know more about this.
Yeah. I have the hardest.
Avid members of the smut community.
Yes.
Yeah. I have the hardest time writing smut scenes, and I consume it all the time. Obviously, and when I set out to write books, I'm like, they're going to be smutty. Like, fuck a closed door. Like, absolutely not. Like, they're going to be smutty. But it is the hardest thing for me to write. When I sit down to do a book, action scenes no problem. Like dialogue, no problem. Love writing banter. You know, I love like the hardest thing for me to write, hands down, is sex scenes. And I will tell you why. One, writing them is inherently not sexy because you are thinking, you are thinking through things.
You have to overthink about it. Yeah.
You have to overthink about it.
That's true.
And what's less fun? Like, what is less sexy than overthinking? Like nothing. Like literally overthinking kills everything. You have to like kind of be in the mood, but not really in the mood. If I'm really in the mood, then I'm too distracted to write. So there's your TFI for the day. You have to be like in a super specific mood. It's not sexy because you are overthinking. And then you just find yourself asking the most insane questions. I find myself doing choreography in my head because I'm like, wait, hold on. Where's his hand? Like, where was it a couple paragraphs ago? Like, this is it. So you're constantly, it takes forever to write because you're constantly like scrolling up and you're like, wait, hold on. Where were they touching last? Like, what were they doing last? Like, okay, hold on. Can I have his foot here? Like, what the fuck? You have to, it is a game for thesaurus.com because I want to make sure that you have enough, like, you can't say the word cock every single time or it's just going to be like every other sentence would like have the same word in it. And that reads horribly. So you have to like come up with a million different ways to say they're horny, like, you know, over the course of 2,000 words to communicate the desire. And like, some of it actually is fun. You know, it's not the worst thing. It's clearly not the worst thing in the world. And it is very like satisfying for me as the author, especially when there's like an emotional arc involved, which typically there is. Because then you do finally get to like add in the like emotion of it. Some of the best advice ever given to me, and this was given to me by Amy Quiverlandon, who's also an author and has written some of my favorite books. But she said, if you feel like your sex scenes aren't hitting, she's like, don't go back in and add a blowjob. Don't go back in and add more foreplay. Don't go back in and add drinks. She's like, go back in and add emotion. And like, that is what's gonna, that's what's gonna take
elevate it.
Pun intended. If you feel like you read a sex scene that you just wrote and like, this isn't working for me, she said, go back in and add feelings and add that he's thinking like, oh my God, I'm never gonna have her again. This is our last time like getting to sleep together or whatever, like whatever the plot is. And then, so that's really satisfying. When you get to go in and layer that stuff, but they are absolutely, I will be texting my writer friends and I'll be like looking at my outline, like, okay, what do I have to write today? I'm writing a sex scene today because I know it's going to take me so much more time. Just because nothing else you have to overthink, and there's so many mechanics involved. There's so many mechanics involved, and there's so many synonyms involved. The synonyms of the mechanics. So I love reading them back, and I love writing them. I wouldn't ever put out.
Oh God!
I probably would never put out a book that doesn't have some sex in it. Quite frankly, because I think part of that is also like a moral stance where I'm like, fuck you, there's rape in Game of Thrones. Like these are this does not inherently make my book anything less. Now, I am not George R.R. Martin. Let me make that very clear. But like, just because a female author put sex in it, that doesn't immediately mean it's erotica. That doesn't immediately mean like, oh, it's a spicy book. Like, I mean, also, I fucking love erotica and I fucking love spicy books. So fuck you, there's nothing wrong with it. But especially with my Greek series, I'm also like, there's also tons of fucking like Greek references in here for fucking nerds. Like there's so many. I joked with the last one that came out was Thanatos, who's the god of death. And I jokingly called it a myth orgy because every time he goes and there's a theme of him taking some, like escorting somebody to the other world because they've died, it was another myth. And it's not like a huge thing, but like I literally was like, oh, it's like he shows up when Narcissus dies. He shows up when I think it's Adonis and Aphrodite. He shows up when Adonis died. Like I was like, why would I write a thing of like just a mortal dying? Like I'm gonna. It's not a huge thing, and if you don't know those myths, you don't need to know them. It serves a bigger part of his role in the story. But I was like, oh, this is so fun because I'm gonna cram in all of the fucking myths that I can. And like. Just because also there's absolutely a scene where he gets a blowjob in the middle of a fucking field, like it doesn't like also mean that. So I'm like, sex is just part of life, and just because a woman wrote it and like there's intense, like there's a focus on female pleasure in it, that doesn't mean it's not a myth retelling first and foremost. So I will
also, the Greeks fucking loved sex. They were like one of the horniest cultures.
They're so horny.
Yes. Yeah.
Wait, one of my favorite memes of all time, hashtag history meme, was, and I think it was just like a funny shot of like a typical vase painting of like people looking surprised, and it was like the Greeks when the Romans found, like the Greeks when they found out that the Romans had women involved in their orgies. And I laughed so hard.
Yes. Yes.
So I'll always put in sex scenes, and I love them. And I will always write romance because I love stories. I think everything in life in its own way is a love story. Your friendships are love stories. The work that you do, hopefully you do work that you love. Hopefully that is a love story, the things that you put in the world. You know, not me, but like found families, that's a love story. Like I believe at the end of the day, everything that we do actually is a love story, or it should be. So I will always do love stories, and sex is a human emotional like part of that. So I love sex scenes. I will always have sex scenes, but fuck, are they a bitch to write?
Yep.
So hard.
I also like,
they're the worst.
I get so angry when people like, it's so normalized, not just talking about like Martin and having like rape scenes in Game of Thrones, but it is like, it's not as, I don't want to say like tabooed, but as like censored, I guess.
Right.
Like
it's not as censored. Yeah. It's like super normal. Like nobody like Game of Thrones is labeled. It came out from a major publisher. Came out from a major publisher without being, you know, they put all that text in it. And it is not a like, it's just a fantasy novel. And it's regarded as one of the best fantasy series of all time. And there's no asterisk. There's no footnotes. Like it's so accepted to have sex in a book when it is typically written by a man, or when it's violent or women's pleasure is not involved. That's so fucking normal. Nobody bats an eye. But I remember when my first book came out, my cousins lovingly, I was on like I got a surprise FaceTime, which everybody fucking loves surprise FaceTime.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
My Gen Z sister, they'll just call each other on FaceTime. I'm like, are you unhinged? Like I planned a face, like I need to know. I would never just pick up a FaceTime.
Yeah.
Holy
no.
shit. Gen Z's wild. Anyway. So I got a
They've got nothing left to lose.
They've got nothing left to lose. They really don't, which is good for them. I got a FaceTime from a bunch of my cousins at breakfast, and they were being very sweet and congratulatory because like nobody knew I was writing a book, and then it came out. And they were reading the synopsis like on Amazon, and I have a thing at the bottom that says like this book has violence and like sex scenes. And they were kind of ribbing me a little bit, like, ooh, sex scenes, da, 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 da. And I just was like, yeah. And Game of Thrones has rape. And like, that's like, none of you would blink an eye, but like, even out of a place of like love, and then not like, they weren't scandalized or anything, but like, it was a point. It was a joke that was made. And I was like, it's so normal for you to see sex in so many other scenarios, but like, it's this whole other thing that has a bunch of footnotes and it's categorized differently when female pleasure is involved, and especially when it's like written by a woman. So I'm not comparing my books to to old Georgie, like
more just
whatsoever.
Like situationally.
But there's just a thing of like, that's a fantasy book that is fantasy first and has sex in it, and everybody's just like, oh yeah, it's a fantasy. And mine it's not quite fantasy, it's myth, which like is part of fantasy. Now granted, mine are also very much love stories first and foremost, because I love a love story. So like they are romances. I've written them as romances. Like, don't get me wrong, it is not an epic fantasy by any means. It's a romance and there's sex in it. But there's just this thing of it just drives me nuts, where I'm like, it's so normal for you to see sex in so many other pieces of media, and you don't blink an eye at it until it kind of looks like this. So it drives me nuts, which is one of the reasons that I will continue to push to basically put sex in pretty much anything that I ever write. Yeah.
Not entirely off topic, but I don't know about you, but in terms of like film and series, I found Outlander to be like the show, to be like an open door for me. I was like, whoa, like it's about her pleasure, Like not only the book, but the film, like the show, and the show showed that. Like, and I really appreciated that because film does not, that's harder. It's also hard to get that. There's a lot of gatekeeping around.
Do you want to know an insane rule that I learned about Game of Thrones on TV that made me want to break things?
Yes.
First and foremost, this is it's misogynistic on so many levels. And before I get into this, I want to say that like every single human body is like sexy, and like there's no such thing as like one body type that is like sexier than another, whatever. Yeah. People are attracted to whatever they're attracted to. If you're listening to this, I think you're sexy, like full stop. But there is a rule on Game of Thrones. Like, I don't know if it's just Game of Thrones. I think it comes into play with Game of Thrones the most because of the nudity. But there's so much female nudity, and as we know, very little male nudity on Game of Thrones. But the females that are nude, there's a certain set of guidelines. I don't know how to like phrase this delicately. They basically can't be like, they can't be too curvy. They can't be too booby. Like, yeah, there are naked females, but they can't be again, this is like a very, very like misogynistic patriarchal view of like what's sexy. But basically they're like, well, if you're gonna have naked women, which you can't have naked men, but you can have naked women. But you also can't make them like bombshells because that's too naked. But like these women are fine.
That feels so like actually, okay, strangely like puritanical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. It's the weirdest thing. It is the weirdest thing.
Because so it's like curves.
Like they want a Madonna.
Yes. Like curves are so like.
Yeah. So like you'll see.
Mother, you know?
Yes, exactly. So it's so bizarre. So it's like not only can you not see dick, you're never going to see dick on TV. You can have full frontal female nudity, that's fine. But there's this bullshit set of rules that it's like, but they can't be too curvy because that's too sexy. So I'm like, that's also, do you not think that like naked Emilia Clarke is sexy? Because she is. Yeah. Like, I hate to break it to you, but like, oh, she is. Yeah. But that is just the weirdest. It is the weirdest fucking dichotomy of like, welcome to shit that is rooted in puritanical Christian bullshit, essentially. Because like, I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like,
puritanical nudity is just
like you can have naked women. Because, like, that's fine. And, like, women are here to be consumed and abandoned. So that's fine. You can't have naked men because that's inappropriate. Whatever. Yeah. But also, your naked women can't be too curvy. Because then that's too thick. Like, it is just so
That's
backwards.
Insane.
It's so the weirdest thing. Yeah. Isn't that just so bizarre?
Yeah.
It's fucking freakish.
It's
so confusing.
Milo and I have recently been watching Spartacus, the show. Have you watched that?
I haven't watched that.
Oh, you should.
We all love a good oiled up Greek.
It's like Milo's like, oh, it's like so homoerotic. I'm like, it's also for girl. Like, why do you think I'm watching it?
The girls love a little homoeroticism.
Yeah, like we love oiled up guys getting in fights. Like
also
genuinely angry. Yeah.
Go to the Greeks.
Yeah. And you have
this is historically accurate.
Yeah, and you have Lucy Lawless, who's like gorgeous. And she's like I love it too because she's
stunning.
It's like a good portrayal of like an older woman being like really attractive and like
love it
and stuff. I love that. So
I mean, like,
had to get that out of my system.
Did he realize
it's
that
literally
like,
still in my system?
Oh my God. I just pulled it up and I was like, all right, keep that open. We're going to watch that later. Maybe
in bed.
I have to write. Yep. Yeah. Well, no, right before I have to write my next Hercules for me.
Yeah. Yes.
We're gonna watch.
Yes.
We'll read for like little throwaways to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Love that. Yeah, I mean, they were also like the original, well, not the original because like the world's oldest profession, but I was like, they were also sex workers. Like high class women would pay money to go.
They literally do that.
In Coliseum.
Yeah. Dude, there's orgies. Like it's insane.
Yeah. Look, you know what?
It's a Netflix too. I'm like,
should we just start watching that right now?
Yeah, we're actually going to stop and we're going to pivot. Look, if the fall of of the U.S. means that we go back to like ancient Roman sort of shit.
I'm there.
I'm happy for some secret cult orgies.
Yes.
I'm fine. I will host a cult orgy tomorrow.
Yep.
Like, fine with me.
Yep.
Bring it on.
Well,
excellent.
Do you have any things you want to know, Melissa? I know I just asked a couple questions. So,
well, I was going to say, I want to get kind of into your publishing stuff, but let's see here.
Mm-hmm.
But before, because I know Bethany particularly is interested in that. So I'm going to kind of touch the last few like reader-ish questions. Really one off. Okay. So
yeah, I love it.
What book do you think doesn't get enough love in the like book talk, bookstagram, whatever, all encompassing?
I'm so fucking ready for this question. I saw this and I fucking knew. I talk about this all the time on my Instagram. One of my favorite books of all time, if not my favorite, is the Magicians of Venice series. This is also by my friend Amy Quiverlainen. It is a trilogy and it is completed. So my girlies out there who are like, but it's the series is completed. It is a perfect trilogy. It has fucking everything. And the girlies are always clawing. The number one thing I get is like, we need more fantasy romance Rex. Like, we need more fantasy romance Rex. Like, it's like an urban modern fantasy. So it takes place in our world in like a modern day and age. It follows, the main character is Dr. Penelope Bryce. So we have a female PhD who's in her early 30s. So we've got a fucking female main character who's in her 30s. Fuck yes. She's an academic. She's brilliant. And her whole thing is that she is searching for archaeological evidence of Atlantis. So very much like she's an outcast in the academic community because they all think she's crazy, blah, 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 blah. Well, she gets called to Venice because she's the only expert in this field. And there's a bunch of creepy cult ritualistic murders happening in Venice that have been tied to like Atlantean like references kind of. So she comes in as an expert. Long story short, Atlantis is real. And there's a group of immortal magicians who have survived since the fall of Atlantis. And the murders have a supernatural element to them. I'm trying not to spoil too much.
Yeah.
And then she obviously falls in love with the super hot, sexy, immortal Atlantean magician.
Yes.
And then they have to team up to make sure that the world doesn't end. And it is the most perfect, like, found family. Like, it is the best gang of characters, this group of magicians. It is like my favorite fucking thing in the world. If you love myth and history, this goes through so much of it. Starts in Atlantis in Venice. The second book takes place all throughout the Middle East and touches on like old biblical myth and archaeological studies. They go to Turkey at one point too. Like, literally, if you love like fantasy and myth and found family and romantic, like, it is spicy. It's not going to be like if you pick up a KU book, you know, that's like, it's not going to be like mafia romance. They're fucking on the second page. But like all of the sex is on page. Alexis is probably like it's like Cassian and Alexis are like tied for me, like favorite book boyfriends. It just has fucking everything that I feel like the girlies love on books. And I feel like I just go hoarse screaming about it because it's so fucking good. Like, found family, mystery. Like, it's like feeling like you got like your Hogwarts letter in your 30s.
Yeah.
That magic is real. And there's this like huge secret house with this massive underground magic library that they've been protecting for thousands of years. And there's this super fucking hot like magician who's like,
I want to read this.
Really,
I was going to say we should add this to the podcast.
It's so good.
I love urban fantasy.
If we read this for the podcast, will you join us?
Yes.
Okay.
And I
Talk about it. Yeah.
I will drag Amy's ass on here too.
Yes.
I will make her talk about it with us. I will.
Yes.
It is my favorite fucking thing. And I think this was a defining moment in our friendship because I was texting Amy after I finished the first book. And I was like, all of those murders, because it's not like, if you don't like thriller or crime, you're fine. Because it like kicks off the supernatural plot. So like, it's not a huge part of it. But I was like, I loved the TV show Hannibal with Mads Mikkelsen. I butchered his name, but like, if you loved like that TV show,
I love
super
him.
homoerotic, amazing.
Okay, I need to watch that too. Shit.
Oh my god, have you not seen it?
I fucking love Mads Mikkelsen.
Oh my
It's
God.
so good.
It's so good. He plays Hannibal in it, and it's a TV show. It is one of also the most visually beautiful things I've ever seen.
Yes.
Like, the show.
Oh, I love visually beautiful
her.
things.
Yes, like Mac. I texted her and I was like, those murders, like the culty murders that like bring her to Venice. I'm like, because she describes the crime scenes and they have a ritualistic thing to them. I'm like, they made me think of the Hannibal show. And she was like, oh my God, that was my inspo. I wanted these super ritualistic, like creepy Hannibal murders.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's what I thought of. So if you love the show, there's even elements of that in the first book.
Okay.
Like, I won't shut up about it. I'm like, I get almost angry. Like, I'm so worked up.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's everything the fucking girlies love. Like, it's perfect. It should be huge. Like, if anything should go mega viral on fucking Book Talk, I feel like it's Magicians. Because if you love ACOTAR, if you love Crescent City, like, if you love those elements of like magic, paranormal, myth, history, creepy murders, found family, sexy as fuck, ancient immortal magician man, like Penelope's in her 30s and she has anxiety and like some other mental things
mood
that just like
love it.
Right? I know, like fucking same. And I think, and this is something that I really loved in it too, that I talked to Amy about as well, is like it's kind of that like reluctant chosen one trope that you see a lot. And I always say trope with love, like that's just a writing device, but she's kind of this like reluctant hero. And just because she starts like banging the hot guy, like her anxiety doesn't go away. Like she's still like, she's like, I still have panic attacks. Like this is still like up until the end. And this is also something that I loved with Nesta so much is like up until the end, like banging the hot guy doesn't mean that all of my mental issues went away.
Yes.
And you read so many KNU novels where it's like, which I'm not knocking them, like fucking bread and butter, like I eat that shit with a spoon. Like this isn't to diss any kind of book at all. But you do just read so many where like all of the heroine problems start going away when she gets laid.
Yeah.
And there's no like magic dick syndrome is what we call it. Like she's still like in the third book has moments of like, well, I don't know if I'm fucking supposed to be here and doing this shit. Like I was in a classroom a year ago. I'm 30. Like I have anxiety. Like it's so fucking relatable.
Yeah.
But she just works through it. So it has fucking everything. And then it has some elements like that more books need. So I'm hot. I'm viscerally angry right now about how popular I think this book should be. Like,
that's okay. That's me when I've talked about the Hollows though, because it actually sounds very similar to the Hollows. So I highly recommend you read those because it's urban fantasy, detective style with like fantasy. Okay, perfect.
On my notepad that says more binge reading, less doom scrolling.
Yes. I love that. Okay. But I think one of the first times that I talked about it on the podcast, afterwards I had to like catch my breath because I was like, I didn't realize that I had all of that pent up. I didn't realize how much I needed to share that with somebody. Like it's I
talk about it all the time. And then it's so much fun because then I'll get followers who will DM me like, I know you've been recommending Magicians of Venice for ages, but I finally just read it. And, oh my God, you were right. And I will be like, vindicated. Have you watched
Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Yes.
I am Holt. I am like, vindication!
Yes.
Like yelling in the hallway. Like, this is so amazing.
Yep.
Every time I get so hyped. I saw that question and I was like, fucking broken acrylic getting ready to answer that one.
Let's see here. I think all the stuff we've kind of touched on. So if you want to break into those writing and publishing questions, Bethany.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. I feel like there's a lot of like our listeners. I know Melissa and I have definitely like wanted to write more. What is like some advice you have for like people who are looking to publish or like looking to like get out there? Yeah.
Fucking do it. Straight up. That's always my advice because I feel like I've talked to so many like aspiring writers or beginning writers or whatever, or people who like want to start and don't. And I've gotten a lot of questions kind of over the years, in like the past 2 years, I should say. The past 1 year is the only year that I've been publishing where people are like, wow, like how do you know when you're ready? Like how do I get started? Like what do you like? And my number one thing is just do it, because I hate to break to you, it's a creative field, so you're never gonna feel super fucking confident about it.
Yeah.
Let me just like break that bubble for you right now.
Yeah.
I think I had 4 books come out in the past year. And every single pub day, I was still anxious as fuck. Did not get better like as the time went on. And obviously what did change a little bit is it's almost laughable. I look at the first book that I put out, and now I look at these and I'm like, oh my God, like sometimes I have days where I'm like, should I take the first one down? Like, I'm not going to. I love it. It is a messy, tropey little baby, and I love her so much. I love her. I do. But like, even I can see like, oh my God, I'm such a better writer just like a year later. I'm like, oh God, some of that makes me cringe even now, but it's, it's fine. So it's one of those things though, where like, I've gotten a little bit more confident in my writing. I'm like, okay, like if somebody doesn't like this book, by the time it was the 4th one, I was like, you know what, if they don't like it, that's okay. Like I'm more confident in my abilities now as a writer. So I'm just cool with like, hey, it wasn't for them. That's fine. I think the first 2 books, if somebody like didn't like it, I took it, more like, oh, fuck, am I a bad writer? I'm definitely a better writer than the first one. Like, like you just get better the more you do things. So some things do get easier, but for the most part, just fucking start writing, because if you're waiting for like the perfect moment or like the perfect feeling or like the perfect plot, like none of that's ever going to happen. Like you just got to fucking write it. I always tell people all the time, just fucking do it, man. Just fucking do it. Like start, because I think people get too caught up on like the first draft. And I'm like, the whole point of the first draft is to like, just tell yourself the story.
Yeah.
Like the first draft isn't for readers. The first draft is for you. You're just telling yourself the story. I went back, the last book that I just edited. I mean, I've edited books before and literally like changed characters who have died and been like, nope, like somebody else is dying. Like I've made major changes on like version 3 of drafts before. Like you can do whatever the fuck you want. The first draft just needs to exist. So my advice is just fucking do it. It's like the worst, best thing. Writing is like, it's so awful and so wonderful. Like I would die if I wasn't writing, but also like, I didn't get any words done today because I was like, I gotta write a sex scene today. Fuck it. I can't get my brain around it. I'm not doing it today. So like it's the worst, best thing, but I would shrivel up and die if I like wasn't at the same time writing. So to you guys and to like all the listeners, anybody who has a story that they want to tell, anybody who wants to write more, please fucking just get started. Just do it. I don't care if you write 100 words today, but please do it. Every single person has such a unique point of view because our writing is shaped by all of our experiences. Every single person is living a different life on this earth, and you are the only person who can tell that story in your voice. Nobody else is going to be able to do that. And we need your stories. I think this sounds very hokey, but that's fine. I think that like everything that we do, like I said earlier, everything that we do should be a love story. And I think the world needs stories more than ever because we empathize through stories. We learn through stories. We can develop through stories. We can process and heal through stories. I've healed a lot of like serious religious, sexual, and emotional trauma through reading and telling stories. And we need more stories in the world. And I think that that's something that's so great about the writer community too, is like, I don't really believe there's no competition in writing. Cause like, it's not like competing car salesmen where like, well, this family's only going to buy one car for the next 10 years. It's not like that. People read tons of books every single week. If you bought my book, it's not like you're not going to buy this other author's book.
It's endless.
So like, it's endless. Like, so that's what I think is so great about the author and writer community and doing this creative venture is like, there's no fucking competition. If somebody buys your book, that doesn't fucking mean they're like not gonna, like there's just I feel zero competition with other writers. There's no fucking point. Like from a product standpoint, from an economic standpoint, from a creative standpoint. So it's so great and supportive. So like, just start writing, just do it. Like we need your story. Like I need your story, whatever it is, I need it. So you gotta get going because I've told you now to do it. So.
Well, also like if you think about competition, because I know people like to shit on like people writing similar stories to other people. And I'm like, I'm glad they did.
Great.
Because I fucking love this story. And so if I want to read exactly the same thing with like different characters in a different setting, then I'm going to read the other one.
Emmett girly, Cassie it girly.
Yes.
Same fucking shit. As long as it was written with integrity and it wasn't like stolen maliciously.
Oh, yeah.
You know? Yeah. Which goes without saying, of course. I didn't assume that you were saying that, no worries. Like who fucking cares? I will read fae shit all fucking day long.
Yep.
I will read vampires all fucking day long. Excellent. I'm glad they wrote something similar because I've been trying to find something that makes me feel like this book for the past 6 months. But like, wonderful.
Yes.
Give it to me.
It's so funny because I'm in the middle of this. Have you read the Orcsworn series by Finley Fenn?
I just finished like 2 days ago the first one.
Okay.
I just read the very first one because
so
romantically inclined.
So a fellow like himbo lover of like big cavemen worlds. This
great.
Is definitely your cup of tea. Yeah. So I'm on, I think, the midwife one. And
I just read
every one of them gets better. Every single one of them gets so much better. But it reminds me of what you're talking about, where you guys are talking about is like, it's kind of the same story.
Yeah. Who cares?
But who cares? We want that. We want to be a human woman who gets swept away against her will, but then also gets more choice in this new world because human men are shit. Like, just not. I just want to go to the orc sex dungeon. Like, that's what I need in my life. So, she does it really well.
That's great. I literally just finished the first one and it was solid. I didn't but I've heard most people have told me like, you've got to keep going if you liked it at all because they get so much better.
They do.
And I already liked it a good amount. So I literally, good timing. I just finished like Lady
Cool.
Like 4 days ago for the first time. After seeing it so much, I finally was like, okay, I got nothing to do today. We'll see what this is all about. So like I don't give a fuck. Great.
Yeah.
This gives me more of the thing that I love. Because the thing, like, who gives a shit about
also
like no competition and who cares if it's similar? Like
neurodivergent shit is like it's either that you listen to like the same song, like the same 30 seconds of a song. But the thing is with the book, you can't always when it's the same exact book, you can't always reread it immediately.
Yeah.
And so like for the neurodivergent girlies out there, we love a good similar book. Yes.
Because as much as I love Court of Silver Flame, I've only read it twice and I've only read the other ACOTAR book once. I can't reread really. Alyssa Thorne's books, I'm obsessed with, absolutely obsessed. And I will reread favorite scenes of hers. I think I reread her books more than anything. But they're a little shorter. They're on like they're like 50 to 60,000 words. So I'll kind of pop in and like read some of my favorite scenes and stuff. But like, I am a chronically not a rereader.
Yeah.
Like people ask me all the time, like, hey, the next JLA book is coming out. Are you going to reread the last one before you this one? And I'm like, fuck no, I'm not.
Those are also like 500 pages.
Dude,
A Court of Silver Flames was like cathartically. I cathartically reread that because it was that book
recently
came out at such an important moment in history. Like right after the pandemic, we fucking needed that. We needed to climb those stairs. And like, I've never done that where I was just like, I just kept looking at it and I was just like, oh, I just really want to read it again. And Miles like, read it again. And I'm like, okay. And I read it again and I love it.
Yeah. Silver Flames is the only book that I have like reread cover to cover in the past year. I a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago, I read it. It only came out like a little, like almost 2 years ago now, I guess, but it was like early 21. Was that right? Yeah, 21. So I read it once and then I reread it again this year, but it was like one of the only ones that I've ever picked up to reread. And fuck, still slap. Like still so good.
Yeah.
Like I still get that like feeling when I read it. And it's so rare.
No, that's one of the first, it's not the first bookish tattoo that I have, but I was like, oh, I'm fucking tattooing this one.
Yeah.
I think my thing, I'm like definitely with you on the rereading boat. I remember things too clearly.
Yeah.
And so like, I have to like have some distance.
Emotions are also like a complicated thing for the neurodivergent. Like we don't process or feel them in like a normal way. So it's almost impossible for me to like read it again and have the same emotion.
Mm-hmm. Which I don't want it to like ruin the experience.
Exactly.
Yes, like the memory.
I'm like, the memory of what I felt is probably going to be better than me trying to feel a certain way again. Because like feelings are not, like emotional regulation is not my strong suit. So I truly do say like Silver Flames is like such an outlier in that way for me. And I think same with Alyssa Thorne's books as well, because Alyssa Thorne is ADHD too. So her stuff I would know will always hit, but everything else I like won't reread because I'm like, there's zero guarantee I will feel the same.
Yeah.
Like, who knows?
We've been doing this kind of like mini series ish on the podcast. Started last season with Twilight, where we're going back and we're reading things. Cause I was like you, I was like an avid reader as a kid. I went through like the whole teenage YA romance, fantasy, all that shit.
Yeah.
Bethany did not. And so it's kind of like that I'm dragging her into the darkness.
Dragging her through time.
The cringe.
Yes.
You were acting like her wishbone guide.
Yes. And so we're reading Twilight. We're doing like, I didn't read all of Twilight when we did it for the podcast because I did kind of get to that point where I was like, okay, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But with New Moon, which we did earlier this season, I devoured it again. It was the book that I was like, it was the first book where I stayed up all night. I was like, I'll read it until Edward comes back. Like,
the whole book later.
Yep. The whole book.
The last time I stayed up all like, no. King Seal, which is the second book in Magicians of Venice, was one.
Okay.
Heavenly Bodies by Imani Aru.
I've heard really good things about that.
Oh my God. Like 3 a.m. screaming at the end. What the fuck? Like losing my shit. Lost my shit for Amy's. I think King Seal was the one that was sending me through the fucking roof at like 4 a.m. But before that, the thing that really kicked me into high gear was 2020. July of 2020 was when I found ACOTAR. And
Say that, bitch. Yes.
July of 2020. I had
my life began.
Yes. Because I was an avid reader as a kid and I loved fantasy. But in college and high school, I got away from it a little bit. And then in 2019, ironically, I made a cohesive decision. Like, I'm going to get back to being a crazy fucking reader. Like, that brought me so much joy. Like, what the fuck? But I was reading a lot of like just kind of contemporary, this is kind of mean, but I call it like airport fiction, like the Oprah book club, like the Oprah book club, like, you know, top 10, whatever. So I was reading a lot of that and I was enjoying it, but I was like still kind of missing that like feral joy. And then July of 2020, I was like, oh, a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Like, I love a retelling. That's great.
Yes.
Next thing I know, 5 a.m. And and immediately I was like, oh, I'm sorry. We write fantasy books with fucking now?
Yes.
We're doing that? I was like, oh.
Yep.
Game changer.
It was.
Game changer.
It was.
I read, what was it? It was the first, because Silver Flames wasn't out yet.
Yeah.
But I read those first 3 books in 4 days.
Wow.
Because it was like a Friday night, and then I was like, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then I had work, so then it was like on to Monday. But like I was like, oh, we have books like this now? Like, where have I been?
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, fuck, Oprah's book club. Sorry, Oprah. But I was like, oh, we're doing fantasy like this now? Like, oh, I can get behind this. And then I was all fantasy romance all the time. I was already writing at that point, but I didn't know that like really indie authors were a thing. So I was like writing a manuscript that is still unreleased actually, that I was like planning on pitching like trad and all this shit one day. And then I think it was like March of 21. So then less than a year later, I was like, oh, Bookstagram, like we're doing this, like, you know, and now it's been a little over a year and a half. But yeah, it was like July of 2020. I found ACOTAR.
I love to know that we were like reading it at the same time.
I know. I like to think that it sounded like we were looking at the same moon.
Yeah.
No, well, not the same moon.
I remember Mist and Fury, because I'm kind of like, it's really hard for me to like read things really fast because I kind of like to sit in it.
Yeah.
I like kind of going out into the world and like kind of still being there. I specifically remember after the in scene of Mist and Fury, just like, because it was summertime and we would go out into the backyard and like put the fire on, and I just remember just like
that's called disassociating.
Yeah. And I'm like, someone asked me a question and I'm like, hello? And I'm like, Reese, like, oh my God. This is a new life.
I literally, I remember being like, oh, we do fantasy like this.
Yes.
Now?
I literally was thinking that too. Yeah. I was like, I'm here. I am so here for it.
I'm on board. I get it again. We are back. So yeah, super fun.
I think one thing, because I've read like not fantasy romance before, and one thing that really bothers me, and this is one reason, and it's no hate at all, it's just like why I personally can't get into like the mafia romances, is because of the possessiveness, because he's a man.
Yeah.
But when they're possessive because they're a fae mate, and it's in their nature, and it's against their, like, it's just instinct, that I can take.
Well, because that just satisfies your cave lady brain and is not steeped in 100 years of capitalist patriarchy.
Yes.
So it's just like, oh, this makes my cave brain happy without making me fear for my life.
Yes.
Because I know that fae is probably not an incel, and I know where he was on January 6th.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. No, that's exactly my thought process. So
one day I'm going to get kicked off the fucking internet.
Well, kicked off Twitter, but who actually wants to be there? Who
wants to be on Twitter? I have a day job. I work at a PR agency, and I'm in digital marketing, and I also am an adjunct lecturer at my alma mater, so I teach college courses.
Nice.
And I just say shit like that all the time, and I'm just like, they're gonna fucking fire me so hard. And then I'm like, it's college. Like, we all remember that bad shit professor that we had. Like, they were the fun one.
That is not even the craziest shit that a professor has said on a college campus.
For sure. Yes. And and I'm like, well, they're all like, it's not like I'm saying anything inappropriate, and they're all like 20 anyways. But every once in a while I'll say something like that, like, where the fuck were you on Jan 6th? And I'm like,
don't answer that. It was
do I have to be bipartisan? Like, I'm like looking around, like, do you guys know? Does your lecturer need to be like bipartisan? Because like, I'm not. Sorry, whatever.
No, we get political on here a lot. We have to. Sometimes I'm like, all right, hop off the soapbox. It's about books. We're okay.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing, man. Is like stories, because that's what I mean. Is like. But it's like, we're talking about books, but we're talking about like, but that's very real. Like, why you can read that trait in a fae mated thing, and why you can't read that trait in a contemporary romance. Like, that's so real, and that's so valid. And I think that's one of the things that, again, is so important and great about stories. So I'm always pro books and soapbox, because. And
I also I like what you said earlier about like reading fantasy helps us grow our empathy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That is like,
absolutely.
It's a soapbox that I have jumped on several times on here, because it's like, it's how you engage with other lives. You only actually actively get to live one life.
Yeah.
And so reading fiction, period, engages you with these other lifestyles, other choices. You have to reconcile things. I love a good anti-hero. Like, that's also why I like Nesta so much.
Oh,
because she's traumatized.
She's fucking and like, that's the thing, is like, and I will post, pro Nesta stuff on TikTok and Instagram. And on Instagram, I seem to find the Nesta fans. On TikTok, I seem to find the people who are not Nesta fans. fine, because like, thank you for the engagement. Carrying on. But I'll have so many people be like, she was a bitch though. And I'll just be like, yeah, she was. And like, I have literally very similar trauma to Nesta because like I have mommy issues. Like I speak to my dad now in a limited capacity. I do not speak to my mother. And a lot of the boundaries that I had to set with my mother that were then broken, which have led us to this point of no contact, were around the fact that she was the same gendered parent who raised us in purity culture. There was literally, and I'm like, it's tough to not sound hyperbolic, but I'm not kidding you when I say like from puberty to, I don't know, probably when I started going to therapy at like 27, I would have been more comfortable telling my parents that I had murdered a man and had sex. Like, not kidding. One of my sisters was almost kicked out of the family when they discovered that she had had relations with her boyfriend at the age of 18 with a long-term partner, which like, I don't want to get too much into her story because that's her shit and we are not in contact either. But like, as a parent, I feel like that would be the best case scenario. Like, you mean someone that she loved and like they'd been together for like years and they were 18? Like, you know, so, and she would have been kicked out if she was already 18, so she like couldn't be, but she almost was. Like that, seriously, the severity was like, I would commit murder. Like I thought nothing would send you to hell faster. Like I would vomit at the thought of like, you know, like it was the whole thing. So I have very similar trauma to Nesta in terms of like having shit with my mom, with my narcissistic mother, specifically around like looking a certain way, being a certain way, to be married off, literally married off. And being the oldest sister and going through that shit. And then, you know, I don't speak to my sisters now. So like, I didn't patch it up like Nesta and Farah and Elaine did. You know, my sisters and I are also no contact, but like I have such similar shit to Nesta, and people will comment like, I'm an older sister and I could never fucking treat my baby sisters like that.
That's great for you.
I just don't respond, and I'll be like, that's great. You probably also have zero trauma and supportive parents.
Yeah.
Like, that's nice. And they'll be like, but she was such a bitch. And I just want to be like, and I've been a bitch to people too. Like, no one's excusing, nobody's saying that Nesta's perfect when we say that like, we love her and we love that character and we identify so much with her. Like nobody's saying
we love her because she's imperfect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so many people will hit me with that. Like
Farah's a little bit too good.
Yes.
No, like, and
so
Elaine,
people,
like,
oh fuck.
You know,
but like so many people hit me with like, fucking A. So many people were like, but she was mean. And I'll be like, yeah. Okay. And
like, it's like an ugly side to trauma response. I think that's like, okay, so I'm typically the one who's like, oh, you've got the resting bitch face, which I don't necessarily have an issue with that phrasing because I do like my resting face is very aggressive, and people all the time that like, I'll get I didn't think you liked me at first. And then my response when I am like in spaces of fear is aggressive. Yeah. And that's not something that like I do on purpose. That is just the way that like I have grown as a person. And I don't see that in fantasy characters or in like fiction characters often enough because we're so afraid of female rage. I fucking love female rage. Yeah. I love the shit out of it. Like
great.
The moment when Sansa turns around and watches her husband get eaten, that was chef's kiss. Like there's nothing that hits quite as hard as a woman getting retribution.
There are very few things. To me, Game of Thrones is 7 seasons. There's very few things that are okay from the way that show ended. But one thing that was fucking perfect was Sansa.
Sansa on the throne.
Her arc, her on the throne,
perfect.
Queen in the North, chef's kiss, roses, fucking all day. That I stand by being fucking delicious and wonderful and perfect. Everything else was fucking shit. But that, beautiful.
I would also say that like the Sansa girlies are the Nesta girlies.
Oh, for sure.
We were like they were the ones who were
Cassian fucking Sansa.
Groomed.
Nesta.
Yep.
Yeah. There's no scene, I think. I mean, the whole show's pretty fucking good. I mean, I also was a fucking Khaleesi stan until like they did her so dirty in the end. Like,
bad.
I'm still so fucking mad about that. I love her. Targaryen forever, Daenerys forever. But there are a few moments in that show that made me scream in feral female joy.
Yes.
When Sansa and Arya were in the trial and she was acting like it was Arya on trial. And then she turns her fucking head and she goes, so how do you answer for your crime? Little finger. And that was so, I think I've had less exciting orgasms than like my emotions in that moment. I was like, fucking bitches, getting it done.
And I love it because Littlefinger is kind of this like epitome of like white man, like he's got manipulative the fucking whores around him.
Yes.
You know, he represents so much of that, not just like for power, but for like just sneezy.
He would be a Twitter incel for sure.
Yes. Well, he's got all these whores around him. And then also he's attracted to this 15, 14-year-old girl, and that's the one he's pursuing. And like that is fucked up on so many levels. I will say the actor was amazing.
Yes.
Such a great actor. And he is very attractive. So I was that was confusing. But like as a character, it was so like perfectly fucked up. So perfectly fucked up. And so and like in the same way that we're so scared, like culturally, I won't say like us, we're very clearly not scared of these things, but like so scared of female pleasure, we're also scared of female rage.
Mm-hmm.
We are afraid of the gamut of female emotions.
Yes.
Broadly. There's a very narrow window in which women are allowed to exist. And I'm very bad at doing it for myself. So this is a very good example of do as I say and not as I do. But one of the things that I try to do is, as I don't do this with like strangers, but I do this with like my close friends, is I will like push back on them with love. Like every time they're like, oh, sorry, I'm being so dramatic today. I'm like, no, you're not. Like, these are just feelings. Like, stop it. These are just feelings. Like I push back in people I'm with relationships. Again, I'm not doing this to strangers, but like, I feel like I get so fucking passionate. And part of this is also like, I was diagnosed with ADHD a year ago. So 90% of my life, I thought that I just like was fucking wrong and like had anxiety and couldn't manage my emotions well. And then learned that I was like severely neurodivergent and actually at this point, like likely autistic. And didn't know that until I was like literally 28. So I'm not good at doing this for myself, but like that's one of the things that has just been on, like, that I've just been thinking about so recently is I push back on the way that my friends talk about their emotions all the time, because I'm like, stop apologizing. And like, you're not being dramatic. Like you are just allowed to fucking feel things, my dude. Like, because we are so afraid of female pleasure. We're afraid of their rage. Like women literally can't be mad. Like they can't be mad and they can't be too happy. Like you simultaneously, like you can't be pissed off or sad, but you also sure as fuck can't be like sexually satisfied and happy and like proud of yourself. Like
if you want it all, you want too much, you're like reaching for the stars.
You have to be a placid vegetable.
Yes.
Yeah. So I feel like I love it because I push back on, I'm so hyper aware of that, how like we've also been taught to police our own emotions. And a lot of that comes from also like, it's broadly the way that society is too, but then like being in a patriarchal Christian cult, like really fucking teaches you to be a certain way. Which is also why I think I was diagnosed so late in life, is because I was given the blueprint of how to act. So I acted that way instead of, but
well, also like,
it's just fucking wild.
I'm not sure about ADHD so much, but I see masking a lot more related with like autism. And so what they did was hand you a mask. You didn't have to learn it from like context clues. They just gave it straight to you. Yeah,
exactly. Masking applies to both ADHD and autism.
Does it?
Yeah, so it does. I've learned, I was in the process of like, this is such a tangent for which I apologize, but I was like in the process of getting a formal autism diagnosis. Just for my own knowledge. I've learned it's actually a lot more common, especially for adult women. Like a lot of people see self-diagnosed and that's like, okay, you Google shit, whatever. But like there are a lot of fairly legitimate assessments for people to self-diagnose autism. And like that conversation I've learned is different than like other types of self-diagnosis, just because like the medical system has failed women so spectacularly. Especially when it comes to mental health, that like it's a lot more normal and accepted and like understood that like people are like, oh yeah, like you can recognize, so I've learned that conversation is like a little different. But I was in the process to be formally diagnosed just for my own like understanding, just for myself. But I learned that like if you have a formal diagnosis, you can't apply to some I'd like to leave the US eventually one day. And I've learned that you can't apply for some work visas if you have a formal formal autistic diagnosis.
Yeah. Because
the laws are really out of date. They don't understand that it's a spectrum. And then they think that would make you incapable of working. So I actually stopped. And now I'm no longer a formal diagnosis because there's visas I might want to apply for, which is fucking wild. But yeah, they hand you a mask. So I was like, oh, you don't know. Nobody had any idea that I didn't fucking understand social cues because I didn't need to. They literally just gave you the fucking behavior.
Yeah.
So yeah, masking is literally like they just fucking handed it to you. But so I'm so big on like all of the female emotions in media, in life, like all of them.
I always found too, because I grew up pastor's daughter.
Oh, it's pastor's kid.
Yeah. So not quite a cult, but I was like very
in its own way.
It's a cult. It's got its flavor. But it was like, especially with daughters, because he has 3 daughters, and it's like
I have 3 younger sisters. So pastor's family.
That's funny.
I was a pastor, 4 daughters.
Yeah, I'm number 3.
It's a fucking drug, baby.
Yeah, and I was
not a nice one.
Yeah, I was the one that like moved in with my boyfriend and like, and then my dad was just like really obsessed with like my sex life somehow for some fucking reason. And anyways, but like it is, I've always been really attracted to people generally who are very like women who are very like open and emotional, because I was always told I was too much. Shown I was too much. And so it gives me permission to. And so like, I feel like I always feel the most comfortable around people who are like putting themselves out there. Yeah. Absolutely.
It also kind of gives you this blueprint, kind of going back to the masking. Cause I am also like, I am currently an undiagnosed ND. And I know that because one, like that thing that happened probably like last summer where people are like, TikTok kind of diagnosed me as autistic.
Oh yeah.
Where it's like, it's just the algorithm picks it up and suddenly you're seeing the same thing. And I was like, oh no, I might be like autistic or ADHD.
Yeah.
Is that like, when you see those things in TV, like I had part of the reason that I get like that angry, that really defensive is because I didn't have a healthy way. I wasn't taught a healthy way to express those feelings. But when you see like Daenerys, which granted, I don't want to defend like her burning down King's Landing, but when you see that like emotional catharsis, that's huge for somebody who wasn't taught how women can have angry emotions in a healthy way. Or like again,
pray away.
Yes, exactly. Like it's fine. It's just like it's the demons, and like no, it's like depression and anxiety, and some secret third thing. Like
oh my god, I was very clear. Like I'm formally diagnosed ADHD, and like at this point, there's a RAD called the RADS assessment, and it was developed by psychologists to help people diagnose like
I've
autism.
taken it.
Yeah. So I took it with my best friend, and she got like a 12.
How?
I got 130.
Same. And I've told like, I remember when I first started like thinking about it.
Yeah.
Is I would like tell my friends like, I think I'm autistic, and they would be like, I don't think you're autistic, because I am a very open person, and like there's this very like white young boy image that people have when they think of autism.
I mean, same with ADHD. They think of hyper boys.
Yes, they think of like dinosaurs and trains and jumping up and down.
I'm like, that's actually like, but again, even if you aren't religious, society teaches women to be so quiet. Like society literally teaches young women with ADHD to mask. So like, that's not a valuable symptom to like, you know, so anyway.
Well, I remember seeing these things about like, because ADHD people and autistic people will hyperfixate. Books were my hyperfixation.
Oh yeah.
That's like, that was the pipeline. That's how we got here.
There's a term for it, which I have forgotten, but there's a clinical term for it. And it's an indicator of autism. And this was me. And I was like, holy fucking shit. Where as a very young child, you showed extreme abilities for reading, but nothing else. Not math, not science, nothing else. And in kindergarten, I was reading at a 5th grade level, and they wanted to move me up a grade, but they didn't, because they didn't think I'd be able to socially connect with my peers. Like, I'm like, wait a minute. You're telling me that you didn't think socially a 4-year, like, because like kids are fairly fucking similar from like kindergarten to first. Like, I mean, obviously developmental changes are huge year over year when you're that young, but also like you're still talking about like recess and the same TV shows, you know? So like, wait a minute. You're telling me, but I wasn't overly good at math, wasn't over good at science, wasn't over good, like nothing else. I was not necessarily a genius or smart kid. It was just reading. And I had this insanely off the charts better than normal reading analysis, but nothing else. And then I'm like, and you're telling me you didn't want me to move up a grade because of social cue reasons? Oh.
That seems like a pretty big fucking indicator.
Oh. Yeah. And nobody thought to go anywhere with that. Like the school counselor, my parents, everybody just like, no, I mean, she's really fucking good at reading. And like, but probably couldn't keep up with anybody socially and emotionally unless they're literally her exact age. Like other 4-year-olds, fine. A 5-year-old, fine.
Well, okay. And I'm going to tie this back into like range of female emotions, because we love to demonize women's things, like girls' things too. Like that's why Twilight had like that terrible
justice for fanfics and boy bands all day.
Yes.
All day.
And a lot of that inherently ties into like young women with neurodivergence.
Yeah.
Because more and more data is showing that like we hyperfixate, we engage in different ways than like young boys. And a lot of that does have to do with socialization. So it's not like, I'm not claiming like binary or anything, but like boys are socialized to like dinosaurs. So they're kind of like given what is coded as men's or boys' things until they find one they like. And girls are coded to like girls' things. And so we're offered the things that they allow us to like until we find the one that takes up our entire lives. Yeah. And so that's why you get like, you wear the Twilight shirts, you have the Edward necklace, you have like the Harry Potter wand, you want to do like all of those little cute things. You got your entire like bedroom is decorated with K-pop stars. Like that is
I love it. I love
valid.
I love women's joy. I love women's obsessions, especially as young women. Seriously, like justice for like boy bands and fanfic, like and fan culture, like all day. Of course, I understand that there's like some harmful elements to fan culture where it becomes obsessive and not okay. Like, you know, that aside, justice for fan culture, because people talk so much shit on girlies who are just fucking out here trying to enjoy a pop album. And I'm like, you want to talk about fanfic? Men play fantasy football every week where they make a little dream team. What the fuck is fantasy football?
It doesn't even make sense.
My dude. That's fanfic.
Yes.
You're picking your favorite characters and making a separate non-canon plot for them.
Yes.
That is fucking fanfic.
And they bet money on it. Like they gamble.
Bet real money on it.
Yes.
You bet real fucking money on it. We spend money on shit, but it's a genuine transaction. You just might fucking lose it.
Yep.
Like, what the fuck is fantasy football, my dude?
It's got it in the name. It's in the name.
It's in the name.
Yep.
The other thing that I love so much, and I didn't come up with this, this was like a post I saw somewhere, and somebody was like, you realize that like Inferno and Virgil's like, have you seen this? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, yes.
They're like, he literally goes to hell hangs out with Virgil and
his like hero.
Who's his hero? And
yes.
it's like, yeah, and then Virgil and all of his buddies thought I was really cool too. And like, that's fucking Inferno. It's fanfic.
It's Bible fan fiction.
It is fucking fanfic.
Yes.
He literally goes to hell and hangs out with his favorite characters and is like, and they liked me too. They thought I was pretty cool. Like, it's a fucking fan.
Yes.
I'm like grabbing the mic to like make my fucking point.
We need everyone to hear. We want to make sure they all hear.
Yeah, we just want to make sure everybody, because I'm not yelling.
Yes.
Yeah, justice for fucking fangirlies, because Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah.
They also do incredible things. Like the BTS Army organized donations for, and I believe it was awareness around like a gun control cause in the US. They raised like $50,000 last year for like a cause, and like rallied and then bought a bunch of seats for a Trump rally so nobody was there.
Yeah.
They fucking like legitimately are like doing shit.
Yes.
I'm like, they're
also
so
like
fucking organized.
Swifties kind of taking down the Ticketmaster monopoly, which
Swifties
is like
destroying a capitalist monopoly. Like it's fucking gorgeous. It's beautiful. Like fucking justice for fan culture. What the fuck do your football players do?
The people speak.
Yes.
Come on now. It is a democratic, beautiful process.
Yes.
Hello, my little Batman. What are you doing? He looks like a bat.
Oh.
With his little squishy face. Are you telling me that my time is up and you would like attention now? He does that every once in a while. He'll kind of come over if I've been like engaged on a call or something for too long. He'll come over and then he'll just start getting really fucking annoying. And I'll just be like, no, like your time's up. It's my attention time now, ma'am.
Yep.
Hello. Okay. And now we're doing Zoomies.
I see him.
Oh.
Yep.
How old is he?
He just turned 2.
Oh, okay. So you get Zoomies a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. My vet was like, as soon as they turn 2, they because I guess they're still puppies until they're like 2 years old.
Yeah.
They're like officially classified as puppies until they're 2. And she was like, after 2, they mellow out real quick. And I just look at this fucker and I'm like, are you sure? Like, he's a gremlin. Like, he's got the same rules. Don't get him wet. Don't feed him after a certain time.
Yep.
Like,
Yep. We've got a dog, and we had a pretty mellow dog when I was younger. Like my first dog, he was chill after he was done with 2, he was like, he's like an old man. He's cool. He's chill. And then we got this other dog, fucking maniac. He's about 9 now. He's about to turn 9, and he's finally chilling out. And he's still a maniac though. Like he's still once a week. So he'll do Zoomies. He'll run around the house just back and forth. Yep.
You love your Zoomies. I know. I have a very long rope, so he's like half-assed, like tug of warring right now.
Oh,
off camera. He's like, you just hold one end, I'll do the rest.
Okay. So
I got so off from your publishing questions.
It's fine. This was such a good conversation.
3 hours.
I love it. I actually have one like very specific question though, which is just so you mentioned like when you want to get into publishing, when you got into writing, just fucking do it. And yes. But also, what was your first step to actually, like the actual practical first step to getting published?
Well, I self-published. So I think the first thing for me, so all of my stuff's on Amazon. It's exclusive to Amazon because, well, the ebook is, because to be part of Kindle Unlimited, you have to be exclusive to Kindle. So for example, like if you want to be in Kindle Unlimited, which is a great way for authors to, get exposure, and obviously is fantastic for the reader community. We all love fucking our Kindle Unlimited.
Yes.
You can't, for example, then be on Nook or be on Apple Books. You have to be exclusive. So that's like part of the allure is if you're reading something on Kindle Unlimited, it's also the only place that you can get that story, unless you buy a print version. Print versions can be sold elsewhere, but so I would say like my very first practical step to like doing that, I think was probably creating an outline was the first thing that I did. And then I was this is a very particular workflow. Again, I'm neurodivergent, so I don't know if this will work for everybody, but for me, I have to be super prescriptive. So I know some people are pantsers, so flying by the seat of their pants. Some people are plotters and they plot every single thing out. I'm a plotter. So I literally will calculate how long I want my book to be. And then I'll be like, okay, so halfway point is here. So the climax needs to be here. This needs to be here. This needs to be here. The only math that I will do in my life. And then I will calculate, okay, so this chapter, I need to write this specific 2 scenes and it needs to be this many words long. And I will map out the whole book like that. So then when I sit down to write, I can just write because I know exactly what I'm writing and I know exactly how long it needs to be. So I think creating that outline was like the very first tangible step for me. And then for getting published, I think the first thing that I did was I just started getting familiar with the KDP platform. Kindle Direct Publishing is what it's called. If you were to self-publish, you do it through KDP. So I just created like my KDP account, which you just like can go into your Amazon account and then like make a KDP one. It's really easy. And I just started like getting familiar with like what it looks like. So understanding what I needed to do to format it, understanding what I needed to do, like what were the specs for creating a cover. I did the formatting myself, but I obviously have a cover designer. It's not in my wheelhouse. So start getting familiar with KDP if you're going to self-publish, just like kind of what are the ins and outs, get to know what are the things you're going to need to help yourself format it, help yourself get a cover person, and then to just get going, to just start writing. For me, I'm a plotter and it helps my ADHD to have a super specific plan, which creative processes are very, very different. That might not work for everybody. But definitely just start poking around KDP to get used to it. And then when your book is done, you know, okay, these are the specs. This is like how big the cover, this is what I need to format it. These are the files, and stuff like that. So just start poking around in there, get your outline. But then when it comes to the writing, like just fucking do it, because there's never going to be like a perfect day, a perfect mood. You're never going to like feel perfectly ready.
Nothing good ever happens in the comfort zone.
No, nothing. Calm waters do not make good sailors, as they say. So just fucking do it. The world needs your stories. I need your stories. So do it. Now you have a moral obligation to do it. If you are a people pleaser, if you
have a praise kink, if you want to be called a good girl.
if you have a praise kink, come to my DMs and tell me that you want to write a book and you haven't done it yet. And I will tell you that you are a very good girl every time that you get some of your word counts done. I will supply praise kinks to anybody trying to get their shit done. I get it. I see you. I am you.
Yes. And on the opposite end, if you prefer degradation, we will talk down to you until you do your writing. So we are open kink here.
Yeah. No judgment here. All day.
All right. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Molly, for coming on here. We had so fun. This was really, really fun. And I hope you will grace us again, because we had so much fun.
Next week. We're all reading fucking Magicians together. I'm coming back.
Yes.
I'll drag Amy back here. We'll get her on the podcast too, if she likes it or not. I can emotionally blackmail her. It's fine.
Yeah.
We'll all fucking read that. Anytime. This was great. I thank you guys so much. It's so fun for me to talk about this stuff. And as you can see, I could literally do it for fucking ever.
Yeah, I love it. I love a good long podcast, because it is kind of like, when people like to talk and they're like talking fun. Like actual conversation, and it's not like very too methodical. It's like I could get lost in that. It's so
fun to listen. Well, I think for me, it's also definitely a neurodivergent thing. I love listening to people info dump and be excited about things that they're excited about. I don't necessarily have to love it, but I love listening to people who are just excited about their thing. I love it. I love it because I think I just seep in the dopamine from their joy.
Yeah.
It's so much fun to listen to. So hopefully
it's that like mirroring thing, I think. Actually.
Yeah, it's like body doubling.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like body doubling, but just they trick my brain into like, oh, that's my dopamine.
Yeah, we're having it together.
Yeah.
Puff pass.
Shared experience. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. This was great.
Yeah, I love this. This is fun.
Well, cool. So you can find Molly at Bibliophile Blonde everywhere. Everywhere.
And she will be tagged below. So.
Yes, we will get all of that in there. So, okay. Well, until next week.
Awesome. Yeah.
Happy reading. Happy reading.
Happy reading.
Happy
Bye.
reading. Thanks, guys.